Hello and welcome to my September book haul. I suppose I'm calling this a September book haul because it's being posted in September, but this is my book haul from the last 5 months. 6 months. Let's say 6 months. My last video was posted in March. My last book haul, I should say. I should have posted a video like 3 days ago if I'm keeping up with my schedule at the time this goes up, but my last book haul was March, so this is all the books that I have acquired since March. So that's like 5.5 months. Let's round up to 6 to make myself feel better. I have 27 books, which did not all fit in the thumbnail. I tried really hard, but they didn't all fit. I can't lift them, they're too heavy. Yeah, most of these came from July and August, to be perfectly honest. I bought 3 books. Well, didn't buy. I acquired 3 books in the months from April, May, and June. And then I got like 9 in July and 15 in August. Which, considering that I tend to buy books when I'm stressed and I moved at the end of July, makes a lot of sense. So let's get into this. Let's talk about this massive stack of books. These are in no particular order. I mostly acquired them from thriftbooks.com, which I love, thrift stores around me, which I love. I have a great variety of them, and little free libraries when I went to go donate my books, and sometimes they had interesting books that I wanted. So yes, let's go through all of these. The first thing to start with is We Were Soldiers Once and Young by Lieutenant General Harold G. Moore and Joseph Galloway. Joseph Galloway, this is about Vietnam. It's a nonfiction book. My father was a very big fan of Joseph Galloway, who was a reporter, and he wrote this book with the military guy, a lieutenant colonel. No, I don't know military titles, but there was a movie that was based on this book, and it's just, he was a journalist in Vietnam and essentially just wrote a lot about Vietnam, and he was like a combat journalist. Like, he went to where the fighting was. Very, very interesting. Very, like, my father is a very big fan, and he loved the movie, loved the book, and I was kind of meant to read it and like never did because it's like kind of thick for like something that I don't have tons of interest in, but it does sound like really, really fascinating. So I've always wanted to read it, and I think I will really enjoy it. Then I have 2 Hardy Boys books. I am slowly, ever so slowly, collecting the Hardy Boys Casefiles, which was a Hardy Boys series that was published in the 80s and the 90s. I had some of them as a kid, and they are wild stories, like absolutely wild. I love them. I never read them very much because they were the kind of thing where you couldn't read them out of order without like losing something. Like Joe's Girlfriend, if you've read the Hardy Boys, I almost said Harry Potter. If you've read the Hardy Boys, you know that Frank and Joe, there are like several main characters that are pretty much in all the iterations of the Hardy Boys, and Frank and Joe both have girlfriends, and Joe's girlfriend Isla is pretty much a standard character in all of them. She's their best friend's little sister, and she dies in the first book of these. Like, they just kill her in like a bomb, and also like her death might have been faked. I don't know, but I'm collecting these because I want them. So this is Deathgame, which is number 7. Survival is Never Child's Play. And See No Evil, which is number 8. Crime Always Leaves a Bad Taste. Love it. Love it. Like, tell me these don't look amazing though. They make me so happy. I'm very slowly collecting them. It's not like I always buy them, but it's like when I do a thrift books order, I try to always throw like 1 or 2 in just to like add to the series, because there are an obscene number of those books. I also got 2 more books in a series. Tess Gerritsen's The Apprentice and The Sinner, which are books 2 and 3 in the Rizzoli and Isle series. I read the first one, which was called The Surgeon, and I found it kind of mediocre. Like, it wasn't a bad cop thriller, but neither was it a fantastic cop thriller. So I pretty much was just like on the fence of whether I wanted to like invest in this series, but my library didn't have any. Well, they have some of the later ones, but they didn't have these two, so I just went ahead and got them both, and I'm gonna read them before I decide if I'm gonna continue on, because this series is going to be kind of an investment of like, I'm going to have to purchase a number of the books, and I don't want to do that for like a cop thriller series unless I'm like down. So the first one was okay. I'm hoping these two are better, because I have heard people who like really love this series. I forgot to mention the Rizzoli and Isles TV show is based upon this series, so I liked that show. It was super creepy. My best friend and I both watched it and talked about it a lot, and it was like nightmare inducing, but I really want to love these books, this series. Patti, Callahan, Henry, Between the Tides. I don't remember buying this. I don't remember this one. I hate that this happens in my book hauls. I just come across books, like, I do recognize having this. I remember typing it into my my TBR spreadsheet, but I'm looking at this like, I don't remember where I got this from or why. Like, what drew me to this? Something must have. It's about a woman whose father passes away. Her father was a literature professor, and she returns to somewhere they lived when she was a child. But there was a childhood tragedy that happened there that made their family move. It's a journey that might lead her into a new life of love, forgiveness, and self-discovery. I can't pretend to talk about this book. I don't know why I got this. Like, not in a judgmental way. Like, reading it, it sounds fine, but like, why? I don't know. Maybe it'll be amazing. Like, reading The Bat just now seemed completely new, first of all, but it did seem like really interesting, so I understand why I got it, but like, why? I don't like that I don't recognize some of the books in my hauls. That's what I'm trying to work on. I don't mind buying things, but I wish to buy things with purpose, and this seemed not purposeful. This was purposeful. Domestic Pleasures by Beth Gutcheon. I read Still Missing, I think, by Beth Gutcheon a while back, and really enjoyed it. It was about a woman whose son went missing, and like there was no trace, no trail, like the police didn't know what to do, and like months went by, and it was just her story, and it was really fascinating. So I'm going to buddy read this with Booksellers. I don't remember what it's about. It's about a woman whose ex-husband dies in a plane crash, and I think she kind of has potentially a romantic relationship with the executor of his estate. Maybe that's what it's about, but I'm gonna buddy read this with Booksellers at some point, hopefully, but I just kind of wanted to read more of Beth Gutcheon. And then, this was a recommendation from Mianicorn at the Bookish Land. All the people I mentioned will be linked down below, as always. Black Box by Shiori Ito, the memoir that sparked Japan's Me Too movement. This is a memoir of a woman who, I don't remember, there's not a description on the back, so I'm going based off of the recommendation that Mianicorn gave me, like, well, not me, in a video, like 4 months ago, maybe longer. Like 4 or 5 months ago. This is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir about a woman who was raped in Japan, I think by a business associate, maybe? I wanted to say there was something about like work involved with this and her job, and like the police shut it down, and she kind of went public about it, and it kind of like gave the movement momentum, I think, something, I don't know. It's just about a memoir of a woman who was sexually assaulted and her experiences with that, and I think she became the face of it, kind of. But me and Corn talked about this being really amazing. I'm describing it poorly. It's really hard when they just don't, like, they offer nothing except quotes about how great this book is, which, like, I'm sure it is, but please describe it to me so I know the topic. But I've wanted to read it since she mentioned it, and I just happened to pick up a copy. And then another thriller. This I got from, what are they called? Little free libraries. So it was free because I try not to buy thrillers unless I have a specific purpose for them, because I do tend to, like, unhaul them very quickly after reading them. Like 90% of the time, if I buy a thriller, I'm gonna unhaul it after I read it. So I try to not buy them and get them from the library instead. But I figure, because, like, it's free and I can just return it to the little free library when I'm done. Girls Like Us by Christina Dalcher. It's about an FBI agent who is going home. She has an iffy relationship with her father, who is also a cop, and they have a secret family history, I think. I like secret family histories, and that's like 90% of thrillers. Well, ones I pick up. I'm just a sucker for that. When people have, like, childhood trauma and they return to their hometown and estranged family relationships and, like, discover things. I'm such a sucker for that. Oh well, it sounded interesting, and I figure, like, it'll probably be mediocre. I'll enjoy reading it, and then I'll just return it back to the little free library and someone else can enjoy it too. And then, oh, I'm super excited about this one. Intentional book. Okay. I have such a bad habit of just getting books to have books, and it's like, I have books. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is about reform school in Jim Crow, Florida. It's historical fiction about racism. Basically the abuses of a reform school in Florida that I think was, like, similar to juvenile detention, I want to say. Very racist, very abusive, like, lots of traumatic, horrible things happened there. I'm pretty sure they killed children. But I remember a few years ago, like, when this was published, it was very, very big, and everyone talked about how amazing Colson Whitehead was. And I always meant to read this and read more of his books, and I never did, just because I never, like, happened to pick up a copy anywhere, and I've been trying to use the library less, so I finally got a copy. And I really do expect to love this. Like, the way people talk about his writing and the importance of his stories, like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love this. And then I got Vox by Christina Dalcher. This has gotten fairly mixed reviews, but this is about a dystopic society in which women have a limited number of words to speak per day. I forget what it is, like 50 or something. Like, they have 50 words per day. Once they've said 50 words out loud, they can't speak anymore. I know this was pretty big on BookTube a while back. I remember hearing about it and being interested by it. I have seen it get very mixed reviews, but, like, I wanted to read it because it sounded like a very fascinating premise. But I'm hoping this one is good for me. And then I got a classic, East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is a lovely book. It was a lovely edition. Like, it's so pretty. So, like, I had to get it from a thrift store. Because, like, I'm sure I could find another copy of this eventually, but will it be this pretty? And do I eventually want to read it? Yes, so I got it. I don't know what East of Eden is about. Doesn't matter. It's a classic. I've never read any Steinbeck, like, not even Of Mice and Men, which I'm pretty sure I own. But I have a tendency to just, like, get classics because they're there, and then I read so few classics, which is a problem. But I do want to read this. Maybe in September, maybe this month, but we'll see. It's kind of a thick one. If you want to know what it's about, you can Google it, because that's all I would be doing. I picked up Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This has gotten so much hype. This is a middle grade book. I want to say it's a memoir, perhaps. I think it's in verse. It is in verse. About growing up African American in the 60s and the 70s. And people on BookTube have been talking forever about how wonderful Jacqueline Woodson is and how, like, fantastic all her books are. And I don't read super much middle grade anymore, but I do read like the occasional one because middle grade is lovely and fantastic. And I don't know. I did want to try this and I saw it and I couldn't resist. And I think this is one of her books that gets the most attention. So I'm very, very, very excited. And then I got Kindred by Octavia Butler, which is science fiction. It's about time travel. A woman living in modern day, a black woman who's in her mid-20s in modern day, gets transported to slave era and like is flipping back and forth between like living in modern day and living as a slave in the 1800s. It doesn't say. But I have heard amazing things about Octavia Butler and this book specifically, so I kind of just assume I'm going to enjoy it. I don't know. This one has been on my list for a while of like, it's not really like 100% my genre. I don't usually do time travel stuff, but like it's always been there as like, I should read this eventually because it's supposed to be so good. And I have, not that yet, Prep by Curtis Sittenfeld. I've just slowly been collecting Curtis Sittenfeld's books because I really loved American Wife, and then Rodham was mediocre. But I keep collecting her books because I want to read them, and I feel like she has more that I will love, so I just keep grabbing them, and now I have like almost a full collection of her books, which was kind of unintentional, but we'll see. And hopefully I love them, and yeah, I'm hoping they're more like American Wife than they are like Rodham, so we'll see. This is specifically about a 14-year-old who goes to a boarding school at like a very prestigious place. I think the thrills of adolescence. I don't know. I don't know if this is YA or adult, because I know she usually writes adult, but that premise could, depending on how it's written, be either, so we'll see. I don't super love boarding schools, but I do love coming of age stories, so I'm hoping this will be for me as well. Then I got another Margaret Peterson Haddix books, Among the Imposters. This is the second book in the Shadow Children series, and that series is basically about third children are made illegal, so like people can't have more than 2 children, and this series is about children who are the third children and who have to live in hiding so they don't get murdered, basically. I think I read this as a child, but I don't think I ever continued on with the series, and I always like loved it. I kind of just collect Margaret Peterson Haddix books now because she writes like kind of weird speculative middle grade stuff, which like is not my thing, but I love them. So I kind of want to get this whole series so I can like read the whole thing all at once and experience it the way it's meant to be experienced. And then we have Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, which I have read. I read this in high school, and I remember not enjoying it, but like I don't know how much of that just had to do with the fact that I was in high school and being assigned a book, and I didn't like being assigned books, so I do want to give it a try and read more of Toni Morrison, because like she's someone who's just so worthwhile to read, and I don't know, she's one of those people who's just like amazing in the industry, like as a person overall, but like everything she did within the industry was so worthwhile, and people talk so highly of her books. They're like, I don't want to sit here having the same opinion of her that I had as a 15-year-old who was forced to read a book that like I had no feelings about and just didn't want to be forced to read a book. But this is about a black girl set in the 1940s who's struggling with like her perception of beauty, and like white girls are considered beautiful and like blonde hair and blue eyes, which is why this is called The Bluest Eye. So it feels very important, and Toni Morrison is very important, and I need to read more of her books and like get an actual like real experience of her, because being forced to read one at 15 doesn't count. I have Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which I know is a pandemic book. That's pretty much all I know about it. And it's about a woman who, it's a flu pandemic too, which is just like uncomfy reading in these times. But it's set like 20 years later as she's moving between settlements as part of like a traveling group of musicians. So I know people in booktube love this, which is kind of why I picked it up. And also, like, a pandemic right now might hit pretty close to home. So maybe it'll be good, or maybe I'll wait until there's a little bit more distance before I pick this up. Another sequel, I have some more sequels here too. The School for Good and Evil, World Without Princes, which is book 2 in the School for Good and Evil series, I think. Yeah, it's book 2. I was pretty sure it was, but I didn't see it on the cover. I haven't read the first one, but I do own the first one, and because I saw this in a thrift store, I was like, I'll grab it for $1 so that, like, when I do read the first one, I can just go straight into the second one. Because this series just has such a cool premise. It's basically, they live in, like, this fantasy, I think, society where there's a school for good and a school for evil. And these two girls, the blonde girl assumes she's gonna go to the school for good, and the dark-haired one assumes she's gonna go to the school for evil, because, like, that's who they, like, think they are. I mean, I think it's deeper than their hair color, but, like, aesthetically, you know, I think is the thing. And they wind up flipping, so, like, she's the evil one and she's the good one. And that's kind of the premise, and it's their lives, and I've heard such wonderful things about it. It's like a middle grade series, so I picked up the second one. I don't know anything about the premise of, like, the second one at all. And then I have 2 books in the same series. I have The Mage-Lord's Legacy and Conquest of the Ten by Kay MacLeod. These are books 2 and 3 in the Constellation Saga. The first one is Heirs of Power. Kay MacLeod is the sister of Kaz from Cats and Camera, which is how I heard about these books and why I got them. But these are a high fantasy series about a group of people who are, like, second generation magical abilities that were passed on from their parents, and they have to get together to, like, save the world against the same evil that their parents fought. I really enjoyed the first one. I read it last month, which was why I bought the second too. And as you can see, I'm currently reading this one. I really enjoy them. Like, it's a really, like, interesting premise and, like, cool story. And I really love, like, all the characters and the character dynamics. So, like, they're just really fun high fantasy. Yeah, highly recommend. And then weird random book, Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. This is apparently a love story. It's about, like, this romantic relationship, but based on, like, the way it's described and the awards it's won, I don't think it's a romance novel. I think it's just, like, heavily focused on a love story. It's set in 19th century Australia, and it's a narrative of love and commerce, religion, and colonialism that culminates in a half-mad expedition to transport a glass church across the outback. Which sounds wild. I don't really know what this is about. I kind of picked this one up blind just because it sounded so fascinating. And I love books that focus on a romantic relationship, especially when, like, they're not, like, a straight romance. There's, like, other, like, I don't know how to describe that, but, like, yeah. It sounded wild and fascinating, and I'd not heard of it before, but I was just kind of, like, down after reading the description. And I have An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. It's about a married couple who are basically living a good life, and then the man is arrested and sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit, and his wife is kind of struggling with that. Essentially, there doesn't need to be more. And then his childhood best friend kind of comes into the picture in possibly a romantic way, but it's just about, like, injustice and, I assume, racism and the legal system. And it was really highly praised. I remember seeing this when I worked in a bookstore a lot. It was one of those books that was always out and being purchased, so I always was kind of interested in it, so I grabbed it when I saw it, and it sounds, like, really, really wonderful. Potentially. Fingers crossed. I'm almost done, actually. This has not been ridiculously long. Like, rather long, but not ridiculously so. The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. This gets talked about constantly on booktube, or it did at a time, and I was always like, doesn't sound like my thing, but people kept going on and on about how slow-paced it was. And the number one way to sell me on a book is to tell me how slow it is. Just like, it's so boringly slow. And I'm like, tell me more. But I do remember hearing about this recently. I think Emily from Neville Novels read this recently. I don't think she loved it. She might have DNF'd it. But the way she didn't like it, but it was like the way she described it and the things she didn't like about it made me feel like that I potentially would like it. Let me figure out what this is about, because every time someone talks about this book, I'm like, interesting, and then I forget everything. I don't know what this is about. I'm not reading all of that. But it sounded good to me, the way it was described, so I got it. And it's so pretty. Like, there's a lot going on that cover, but it kind of works. So I think it might be a little bit fantasy. Oh no, it's about a woman whose husband dies, and then I think she goes to be like a nanny for a family, or she gets a nanny for her son or something. But there might be a fantastical beast in it, or it might be a metaphor for something. I don't know, but if it's slow paced, I will probably enjoy it. I have the memoirs of Mary, Queen of Scots by Carolee Erickson, which is about Mary, Queen of Scots. I had an obsession with her when I was younger. Like, I was really into her, and I think it was because I had those like middle grade historical fiction diaries, and there was one about her, and then I think I read another book about her when I was like 14, and I named one of my rats after her when I had pet rats as a teenager, which is like one of the weird girl things that I did and had. I was like, I named my rat after a queen. Do people do these things? I don't know. But this is just historical fiction about her life from like her perspective. It's in like her point of view. So that's pretty much what this is. I don't know if it has like a specific plot or if it's just about like her in general. 2 more books. The Whisper Network by Chandler Baker. This is contemporary fiction about sexual harassment at work. And essentially, I think these women create like a blog or an app or something to talk about like the men who are like sexual harassers, maybe, so that like they can warn other women in their workplace. I know this has had mixed reviews. I've heard both like really good things and like kind of negative things about it, but it sounds potentially fascinating and good for me, which is always kind of what I go with. And then the final book of this haul is a thriller. After I said I try not to buy thrillers, I bought a thriller. Go figure. The Silent Patient by Alex McLeod. I'm pretty sure you recognize this because this is all over BookTube. And I was like, that's a BookTube favorite. Let me buy it. I'm sure I will think it's fine and then I will unhaul it. It's about, I want to say it's a woman who killed her husband and then she just like stopped talking, like, period. Like, no words, like, never said anything, never tried to defend herself, and I think she wound up in a psychiatric hospital because of it. And they were like, did you kill him because he was abusing you? Like, this is a possibility, and she just never said anything at all. It's a thriller. I'm sure many thrilling things happen, and there are many family secrets. I'm sure it will be fine, and then I'll unhaul it, but then I can share this with someone else who will probably enjoy it too. So, those were the 27 books that I acquired in the past, we'll say 6 months. March to September is technically 6 months, so that will probably be my last book haul this year. I'm trying to do like 2 a year now. I feel like 2 a year should be plenty for me, considering I like to do like decent sized hauls. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, if you have any thoughts on these, if you are interested in any of these. I don't know. Leave an emoji down below to let me know you've been here, because I appreciate the interaction. It warms my heart. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see y'all again soon.